how to convince the king that even in the Dark Ages it was necessary to plan for the future. That was St. Chad's problem. Chad told the king that a huge influx of Christians must be expected in the area, and that nothing short of a complete minster would be big enough to cope with them. But the country was in the middle of a heathen revival, and the king would not be swayed. So Chad resorted to miracles. Watched by the king, he slipped off his coat and hung it on a sunbeam. That did it. The king became a planner. He looked to the future, and the minster was completed. Today, the people of Peterborough remember St. Chad. In 1960, there were 3 billion people in the world. By 1985, barring accidents, there'll be 5 billion. If chaos is to be avoided, homes and opportunities must be organized for them now. This time, the authorities of Peterborough have already seen the light. By 1985, enough homes, opportunities and facilities befitting a civilized way of life for an extra 100,000 people are to be built here. What sort of city will people want to live in 1985? What priorities will people have then? Will they be very different from today? When the children who painted these pictures looked into the future, they saw excitement. To them it was to be a super city with astronauts in every street, rockets galore and underwater houses along the riverbed. Waterproof homes, where waterproof postmen would deliver waterproof letters, and waterproof old age pensioners would while away their time with all the best gadgets science could devise. In their super city of the future, even shopping was to be elevated to a grand experience, with hover chairs piloted by mums and grannies whizzing off to the supermarkets. The planner's vision of the future was more prosaic. There's no sign here of any plastic or inflatable houses, no hovercraft traffic lanes or supersonic monorail systems rushing tourists to the city centre. Their aim was to quickly graft onto the existing city a new town equal in size and population to King's Lynn, Boston, Grantham and Bury St Edmunds combined. Many of the city's 88,000 people wish it to stay as it is. Their wishes won't come true.
Well, what sort of road do you think that is going right around the edge there? Is it a big one? Big one. It's got two lanes. Dual carriageway, yeah. Yeah, big
Where would all the factories be?
Well, you see where it says industry here? Well, this is where you build the factories, and all down between the road and the railway there, because nobody wants to live next to the railway, next to the road.
Many of the people who will live here, raise families here, are today busy at their lessons in primary schools. Some of these children are no doubt glimpsing their own futures.
Yeah, they're different sizes.
Well, the idea is that you have houses all joined together, little gardens, and that leaves you lots of space so you can have playgrounds and parks.
Why are the houses in different sizes?
Well, because there's different sized families. You've got little houses for people where there's just mummy and daddy and 2 children, and then you've got a bigger house.
I know a lady with 9 children.
Yes, well, you've got to have a big house for her.
Work on the £330 million city has already started. The general manager of the government-appointed Development Corporation is Mr. Wyndham Thomas. Mr. Wyndham Thomas, how long is the new city of Peterborough designed to last?
Well, the buildings will be designed to last a very long time, and so will the roads. A tremendous amount of money is going in, and you couldn't really plan these to wear out within a given period of time in the hope that it would be possible to replace them with different structures. So the houses can be expected to last 60 years and perhaps more. The road system will last a great deal longer than that, because it will be a road system of a very modern kind, and it will give this new city a much more sophisticated and much more lavish road system than any other city of comparable size in the country is likely to have.
So the city isn't merely designed to last for the 60-year period during which you repay the loan?
Oh, no. No, the buildings are designed for the maximum possible life that you can give structures of this kind.
Tell me this, in new city building today, is there such a thing as planned obsolescence?
No, it's all unplanned obsolescence. And there's a great deal of that, of course, because you no sooner get your plans out and you find that there are things you could have done better, and then the rate of technological change as well as social and political change so rapid that one can always look back from 5 years hence and see how you could have done things better to have made them more appropriate for a longer period.
Do you think that the new Peterborough is going to be a better place to live in than the present Peterborough?
Very much better. I'm quite sure about this for a number of reasons. First, there'll be many, many more job opportunities and career opportunities than there are here now. 50,000 people work here now. At the end of expansion, it'll be 100,000 jobs. There'll be a much bigger and better range of shops, many more opportunities for leisure, more schools, better schools, one would hope, more opportunities for adult education. In every way, it's bound to be better in terms of the opportunities that people want. But if people really want to live in small, quiet communities, this really wouldn't be the place for them.
Machines chew into the countryside, moulding the outlines for 30,000 new homes. But as the districts and individual houses are completed, how will the authorities attract people to fill them?
We have to go out and attract people. We have to tell them about Peterborough. And one of the main things we've got to do in this respect is not just generally to advertise or to go and invite firms to come and hope that their workers will come with them, but actually to go out into London and to work with the housing authorities and other agencies in London to tell people who will not otherwise hear of them about the opportunities for jobs and homes and education and leisure in Peterborough. And I believe that we've got to organise many, many thousands of face-to-face confrontations with people who wouldn't otherwise know about us, and we've got to tell them. And then I think when we do tell them and they see what it has to offer in terms of jobs and homes, they will come.
Some business people realise that a Klondike, glittering with outcrops of gold, is coming to their doorstep. An extra 100,000 customers can't be bad for trade. The experts calculate that about 270,000 people use the city's shops and services now. A hefty proportion of them working in the highly skilled engineering factories that have made Peterborough famous throughout the world. Soon, the newcomers will start to pour in at a rate of about 6,000 a year. But despite a few modern buildings here and there in the city centre, the old city is suffering from planners' blight. Final plans for the development of the area are imminent, but for several years, growth has been minimal and piecemeal. The new city of Peterborough, at present referred to in the jargon of the planners as Greater Peterborough, is a joint production between the city and county local authorities and the Development Corporation. It's a new sort of planning partnership brought about by the heavy dependence of the new city on the existing facilities of the old. Much depends on the goodwill of the authorities towards each other. The declared central objective of the planners is to make Greater Peterborough a city fit to live in. In the master plan they say, "We are determined to make Greater Peterborough a preeminently good place in which to be born, to grow up, to make friends, to have fun, to bring up children, to lead a full adult life at any cultural level, and to spend a contented retirement." Superb ideals, but how can they be achieved? The task? To turn this into a demi-paradise. A tall order, but the planners are convinced that it can be done. Basically, it's a monumental exercise in organization, the control or orchestration of ingredients needed for harmonious living. Lesson 1, it seems, is to provide nothing too fancy. By and large, the British are said to like a simple way of life. According to the master planners, virtue lies in keeping it clear and simple. $50,000 new jobs have to be brought to the city. Variety will help provide the spice of life and ward off fears looming over many modern cities. The fears of becoming blind, soulless jungles. Then there's transport. How to move about in tomorrow's city. That was one of the major puzzles the planners had to solve. To children, it presented few difficulties, though not all their ideas could be considered immediately practicable. It was something altogether more conventional that caught the imagination of the planners. It will be buses that meet and exchange passengers with British Rail's new super trains at a brand new traffic interchange complex. That's 1985 language for railway and bus station. But for the city of the future, why the bus? The corporation's chief engineer, Mr. Kenneth Hutton.
We looked at monorail, we looked at underground trains, we looked at trams. I'm a lover of trams myself. I would like to see trams back. But all these other systems are too inflexible. We already have here an established transportation system which is readily extendable to meet the needs of expansion.
What action would you like to see the operating companies make to increase interest?
The operators are looking ahead and are thinking in terms of introducing one or two measures which I'm sure will stimulate bus use in Peterborough. Things like the multi-journey ticket, where by buying a ticket which will perhaps entitle you to 10 or 20 journeys on a bus, you can get a discount of about 33 1/3%. Another thing is by better use of manpower. By that I mean the greater use of single-man operated buses as opposed to the normal dual-crewed bus.
There's a movement these days away from public transport. How are you going to get people to move back to it?
Well, the main thing is to cut journey time to the minimum, and in order to do this we're thinking in terms of providing bus-only streets, remote control traffic lights operated by the bus driver, the bus having priority at junctions where it wouldn't otherwise have priority, and such measures as these. There are one or two other measures: promotion, publicity, bus design of course is important, the provision of bus shelters in which people can stand without freezing, that sort of thing.
The 5 villages to be surrounded by the 4 townships of the new town are to receive special protection, equal only to the cathedral precincts. Eventually, they'll provide some of the most exclusive executive-type accommodation in the district. One estimate is that a thatched cottage selling at £6,000 now might well fetch £20,000 by 1985. For new town houses, different development conditions apply. The corporation's chief architect, John Cresswell.
There are a lot of problems in designing houses today. The major one is really cost. We have grave cost restrictions. What's commonly known to architects and others as yardstick restrictions, which reduce the cost. Also, we have problems of the cost of land, as well, and developing the land, and this does mean that you have to build at a relatively high density. This is between 10 and 15 houses to the acre. Nobody likes this, but unfortunately at the moment we're having to build to this density.
You say nobody likes this. Does it mean the houses won't be pleasant to live in?
No, I think living conditions will be very favourable, but I think they could be improved by having larger gardens, really.
What are these new houses going to look like?
Housing at the moment tends to be a cube, rather an interesting box. We're looking into all the possibilities of changing this. A house which has some shape to it is far more interesting. I think the house of the future will reflect a larger ground floor area where you really need the space, in the kitchen, the living room and the dining room, and a smaller first floor. I think this will result in a different form for a house, more like tents than cubes. I think this will make housing far more interesting.
The master plan mentions flexible walls. Is this a possibility?
Yes, I think this is the thing we're looking at the moment. We're treating the house as purely a shell which can expand, not in one direction, but possibly 2 or 3 directions.
When Peterborough last went through the fuss and bother of expansion, way back in Victorian times when the railways came to town, this was its answer to pressing needs for housing. No doubt there were cost restrictions then. Will today's brave infant city have banished slums by 1985? Robin Guthrie, the corporation's social development officer.
I think Peterborough has very little in the way of real slums. It's fortunate in this respect. It has a number of older houses, many of which are capable of conversion and improvement. Any house has only a limited life, and you cannot prolong the life of an ordinary house beyond its normal span. But the way things are going at the moment, there's not going to be much that's so old in Peterborough that it can be at that time called a slum, as defined by lack of facilities, lack of amenities in the environment, and so on. By 1985, I would think, particularly with the city's programme of improvement and the efforts that owner-occupiers are making, there will be still virtually nothing in the way of slums in Peterborough.
About 1,000 old houses will be pulled down in the city. Others will provide a stock of cheap housing for people who cannot or do not choose to spend much on their homes. Mostly immigrants finding their feet in the town.
One of the interesting things about Peterborough as a new town is that it is already, of course, full of newcomers. There are people from Asia, people from the West Indies, from Italy, for example. There are numbers of people from Central Europe. And I think this gives a great richness and variety to the life of the city as a whole. And I hope that we shall be able to continue to develop this pattern of variety and diversity within the unity of a great new regional city.
The paradox, to be most keenly felt in 1985, but apparent in our time, is that the new city will make more provision than ever before for people to get away from it. To get away from the roads, the houses, the shops and factories, in an instant. Mile after mile of the lush valley of the River Neen is to be turned into parkland. A place where people can forget their cares and worries, the hustle and bustle, super buses, flexible walls, social welfare centres and all. It will be a place for refreshment, a place for fun, with facilities to appeal to every taste. In selling the idea of the new Peterborough, the Neen Valley Park is used with great frequency. It's used like a girl in the motor car ad, a symbol of pleasure and freedom. In the water meadows beyond, a vast man-made boating lake may one day take shape. Millions of tons of gravel will have to be extracted first. And according to some experts, that might take a minimum of 25 years on a commercial basis. For the present, the lake can be listed among the might-be's and the ought-to's in the master plan. A special committee to examine what could be provided in the park will be reporting soon. Peterborough is at the centre of over 300 miles of waterway, linking with the Wash one way and the Grand Union Canal the other. With its boat building yards and its planned marinas and lakes, it could well become an important centre in the leisure business. As the park gets closer to the city, so it's planned, leisure and sports facilities will become more numerous and more closely packed. Furthermost from the city will be raw countryside for ramblers. Close in will be the sports fields, the tennis courts, bowling greens, bandstands and so on. Very close in, where the park meets the city, the scenery won't have to matter so much. As yet, there are no plans to pull down the river-hugging power station. So can and will Peterborough 1985 live up to its splendid targets? Is it anything more than a planner's dream being imposed on the present citizens? Is it a case of the experts moving in and trampling on the local people's feelings?
Not in the least do I feel that we're trampling on them, and I certainly don't feel that we've been imposed upon them, that we are interfering with their lives in various ways. That's undeniable and inevitable. But there was 5 years of discussion about whether there would be a new city before it was designated. Local people had many opportunities to state their views as to whether they wanted it or not. The city council and the county council voted overwhelmingly for the project, and they are the democratically elected representatives of the people. A great many meetings have been held, numbers of inquiries and hearings. So people have had that opportunity. All right, many of them still may not like the idea of the disturbance that we're going to create, and they may not like the idea of the product that we're going to produce, but they will be involved. As far as we're concerned, we have a deep emotional involvement, not just a cold technical commitment to see a job through. I find, for instance, now that in my discussions with people around the city, I care a great deal more than many of them I meet about the quality of the city centre and about the quality of life. Not just the quality of buildings, but the quality of life that today's children will inherit as adults tomorrow. I wish a great many more people did care a great deal more deeply about this city than appears to be the case, but perhaps generally it's true that people are more concerned with the daily round of their lives than with the general quality of the environment they live in.